If you've ever had a day that was just so chaotic you couldn't even, this one's for you. There's a lot of great things about being ADHD, one of which is super fast processing power, which means we can get things done really fast. We're also incredibly creative. We think outside the box. It's kind of fun. And the other side is that we tend to create a lot of our own chaos. So here's a few of the routines that I've learned are critical to calming that chaos. Before we get into those, really quick, let's talk about why exactly do routines matter for people with ADHD. Well, there's two keys here. One is that consistency reduces fatigue and creates a rhythm that we can then stay in. This means that our brain has a little bit more of that processing power to actually focus on what we are doing rather than trying to figure out what to do. If you've ever had a project where instead of having to start from scratch, someone gave you something to start with, and so you were able to then be more creative and go a lot further because you were maybe editing a document instead of starting with a blank page in front of you, that's exactly what this does. Secondly, routines reduce overwhelm. When we have really good routines in place, this means there's a lot of things that are happening in our lives that we don't necessarily have to put nearly as much attention into making sure happens, which means I have fewer things nagging in the back of my brain saying, oh my gosh, I didn't get done. So here are 4 of the routines that I have learned are non-negotiable. 1, consistent rising and bedtimes. This creates a sleep cycle that I can count on, which allows me to manage my sleep better, which allows me to make sure that I'm getting a decent amount of sleep every single night. And also it takes, again, a little bit of the load off of my brain. I will notice when I start to get away from this, particularly weekends tend to be really easy for me to say, oh, I'm gonna stay up a little bit later tonight because I can sleep in tomorrow. And when that happens, inevitably, chaos follows. Number 2, morning rituals. Before we go, please, please, please find your own morning ritual. I'm gonna walk you through mine real quick, but one of the things that I learned relatively early, but also not early enough in my career, is that someone else's morning ritual is not going to work for you. You're a different person. You need to find the pieces that really support you best. So while it's really great to understand what other people's morning routines might look like, you need to build your own. That said, here's some of the things I've found and why I've found they work so you can find your own versions. First and foremost, I actually do all of my getting ready right off the bat. That is getting in the shower, doing my hair, doing my makeup, clothes for the day, everything, all of that is the first thing that I do as soon as I wake up. Now for me, I do that because it just kind of frees up my brain space so I can focus on other things. You may want to get started with something else, that's totally fine. Next, I'm gonna go make a pot of tea or a pot of coffee, breakfast, whatever it is that I'm going to need for my sustenance for the morning. And really importantly, I focus on just that one thing here. While I may listen to audiobooks or have something going in the background while I am getting ready for the day, when I am in the kitchen actually prepping, I just focus on that. Now, I personally do that because I found that when I try and listen to audiobooks or try and listen to something educational while I'm cooking, I end up kind of having to go back and forth constantly. I need too much attention on what I'm doing, cooking or prepping my drink wise. So I just focus on the one thing and eliminate the distraction. After that, it's time for clear glass activities. Now, this is going to break down into a couple of pieces. Clear glass activities, by the way, are the activities that I do that help keep my glass clear. So the fuzz, the red, the craziness that hits when the stress hormones start to build up has the chance to dissipate and move out of the system. My typical morning routine clear glass activities are going to be journaling, writing, and playing the violin. And yes, that's 3 of them. I spend about an hour and a half just in clear glass activities every single morning. And what I found is if I skip those, the rest of my day is just chaotic. Number 3, work blocks. Now, work blocks, you could call this time blocking or whatever you want to, but I have chunks of time that I'm going to work inside of and chunks of time that I'm not going to work inside of. That means I don't start work before a certain time every single day. I don't continue working after a certain time every single day. I'm going to keep my work inside of those specific blocks, and I'm going to plan out what I need to do inside that block ahead of time. This is where using my calendar and having what I need to do as a bunch of different events on the calendar can be super helpful. This is where having a to-do list can be super helpful, but I have actual chunked blocks of time where I'm going to do nothing but work. And this was a skill set I had to build up, especially when I started the business. I would have family come into town all the time and be like, Stephanie, let's go get lunch. And I'd be like, yeah, let's go get lunch. And now 2 hours later, I've wasted 2 hours of my workday and I now have to go try and get back into work time. But now I'm stressing because I didn't get all the work done that I was supposed to get done. Last but not least, take breaks. Non-negotiable breaks. That includes, for me, an hour-long lunch break that I do not mess with. It includes at least a 15-minute break in the middle of the afternoon because I know my brain needs a little bit extra support in just resetting and clearing things out. But I also make sure that these breaks are away from my office. They're away from my desk. I don't eat lunch at the office. I don't eat lunch at the desk anymore. I get out. I go downstairs. I go out for lunch. I get whatever it is I need to do, but I get space. I do not allow myself to work through anymore because I've learned that when I do that, I wear my brain out and now I don't have capacity to calm the chaos. Now I do want to address real quick, I understand as someone with ADHD, building habits is not necessarily easy for us, especially when the advice is typically like, just be more consistent, which is like, thanks. So here's my 3 keys for building habits as someone with ADHD. First and foremost, start small. I can't tell you the number of times that I have tried to like rewrite my whole life into a series of habits. It just doesn't happen, and all it does is it teaches my brain that habits are unattainable. Instead, pick one thing, one small thing that you want to establish, and then tie it to an already existing habit. For example, if you want to start doing push-ups every single day, maybe tie that to going into your office. So the first thing you do every single day when you get to work is you drop to the floor and you do 10 push-ups. Not only is that a small enough habit that it's pretty easy to implement, it's also something you tie to something you're already going to do, which makes it a lot easier to remember to do that additional habit. Number 2, use visual cues and triggers. So while you are tying this idea of do 10 push-ups every time you walk into the office to something, you may need to get like a little like push-up figurine and put it on your desk so that you can actually remember to do the push-ups every time you walk in. When I was trying to learn and teach myself to make sure that I refill my water bottle every single time I go downstairs, what I did was I actually put a water bottle like right in front of the stairs. So every time I got up from my desk and started to go downstairs, I literally would like kick the bottle and then remember I needed to come back and get my water bottle and fill it back up. But find some kind of visual cue or trigger you can use to remind yourself to execute that habit consistently. Then just make sure you're moving it around regularly so that it's not the same thing. I made sure that I grabbed a different water bottle every single day so I wasn't using the same one to put at the stairs because sooner or later my brain's gonna fall prey to change blindness. And last but not least here, give yourself some grace. You're gonna screw this one up. You're gonna miss days. You're not gonna do it right. You're gonna miss a week. If you insist on beating yourself up over that, all you're going to do is teach yourself that building habits is a painful process. And it doesn't have to be. It's not easy, but it doesn't have to hurt. In my experience, we do this enough to ourselves. We have enough things we beat ourselves up for. Know that this is your brain chemistry in action and give yourself just a little bit of grace because you're worth it.